In this demo, we'll create roles that are required for ECS deployments. All right, in my browser, I've signed into AWS Console. I have my code deploy console page open. I also have the Amazon ECS console open. So I'll select the Amazon ECS console tab. And right now I have no clusters. Okay, on the next tab, I'm open to the VPC management console. In the left nav pane, I'll select your VPCs, and I have one VPC. Now scrolling all the way over, under the default VPC column, it says yes. So this is the default VPC. And I'm showing this because I want to demonstrate that we can use the default VPC as well as subnets. So next, I'll select subnets in the left nav pane. I have two subnets and they are in two different availability zones. So that's good. And also under the default subnet column, it says yes for both. Okay, now I'll select the EC2 dashboard tab. It reports that I have one security group, and that is my default security group. I've just showed these resources, the default VPC, the default subnets, and the default security group, because I want to emphasize that when you're doing an ECS deployment, you can use these default resources. As long as you haven't made changes to them, you can use these default resources. Of course, in production, you would do things like secure access to the application because the default security group, for example, is wide open. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so now let's go over to IAM Management Console. First, I need to create a service role for code deploy on the ECS compute platform. So I'll select Create Role, ensure that trusted entity type is AWS Service. Under Use Case, I'll expand the list and I'll select Code Deploy. Then in the options below, I'll select Code Deploy -ECS. Okay, so I'll select Next. And note that under the permissions policy, there's one policy selected, and that's AWS Code Deploy Role for ECS. Okay, so I'll select Next. For the role name, I'll type ECS-deploy-role, and I'll select Create Role. Now, we need to create one more role, an execution role, and we'll name this ECS Task Execution Role. We create this task execution role to grant Amazon ECS container and Fargate agents permission to make AWS API calls on our behalf. So again, selecting Create Role, trusted entity type is AWS Service. I'll scroll down, and in the drop-down list, locate and select Elastic Container Service. And now in the options below, I'll select Elastic Container Service Task. Okay, so I'll select Next. Now on the Add Permissions page, I'll type ECS Task in the filter field. And note the permission policy that comes up is Amazon ECS Task Execution Role Policy. If I expand this policy, it shows the AWS Services Elastic Container Registry and logs that this policy makes available. Okay, so I'll select the checkbox beside the policy to select it, and then I'll select Next. For role name, I'll type ECS Task Execution Role. Scrolling down, I'll select Create Role. And now the ECS Task Execution Role has been created. Okay, and with that, we have created roles that are required for ECS deployments.